Let's move over to the NL, which may be a little bit more debatable, but not really, in my opinion. We will see how this goes. Shohei, the clear favorite, and talk about another person who's absolutely just not human. Shohei Ohtani getting to 40-40 in August. Chance he gets to 50-50, and the guy isn't even pitching this year. It's just absolutely insane. Francisco Lindor gets in there. We'll have a conversation about him for sure. He's a second. And Marcell Ozuna, who continues. I mean, he has really been one of the key reasons that the Braves are even in a wild card spot at this point. He's really kept them up. Other names on the list: Ketel Marte, Bryce Harper, and LA De La Cruz running at the top six. Will, what is your take on the NL MVP? You said prior to the show that this isn't as clear cut as the AL, and I have some questions about that. So why don't you explain yourself?
Well, the short answer, if we were having this conversation a few weeks ago, is that I would have said fairly hands down that I would not have considered Shohei the most valuable player. I would have said Ketel Marte. That being said, I feel like Ketel Marte's injury has probably hurt him a little bit. Um, because he's been sidelined for around a week at least. I don't know, maybe 10 days to 2 weeks now with what was it, like an ankle injury.
Those damn
Um, uh,
Phillies.
yeah, as I say, not knowing, having watched the game and seeing Garrett Stubbs with that slide, but um, but now, and I hate that I'm defending this person, but I am very much on the side of I feel like Shohei Ohtani gets a lot of immediate praise because he's Shohei Ohtani. And I feel like that immediately takes some spotlight off of other people, especially when you dig a little deeper into stats. And like you said, Shohei's not a pitcher this year. If he was pitching and doing what he was doing and having a decent year pitching wise, it would be hands down because he's doing what he's doing as a two-way player. But he's just a DH this year. However, the other person is also a DH. And if I had to say who I think truly is the most valuable player right now in the National League, I'd probably give it to Marcell Ozuna. Now, here's why.
Hmm.
And this is going to cause a little bit of bouncing back and forth between a lot of stats that I'm looking at online. So I'm going to have to read them all one player at a time and not like truly compared side by side. But a lot of it goes into when I dig deeper into the stats, besides like the quick looks are Shohei Ohtani is batting 292. He has 42 home runs, 95 RBIs. His OPS is close to 1,000. And like you said, he's 40-40. And I think especially because stolen bases are a thing again, the fact that you get power and speed is the immediate eye popper of like, ooh, that's never happened before. This is only also like the second season that we've had where the whole base running rule is a thing. So you put these rules at a different time, we could be talking completely different about how often there were these big power and speed seasons. But for Ohtani, one thing for him is that he has somewhat slipped off in his second half. In the first half of the season, he was batting, if I can find it, because everything is all out of whack now on my phone. Um, he was batting like a little over 300, and in the second half, he's batting 233. He still has some power, but his average is tremendously dropped off. Ohtani, though this is understandable, has a drop off versus left-handers, 308 versus righties, 263 versus lefties. Here's the second half. It is 233. As the season's gone on, his average has dropped and recently significantly. 226 for the month of August. And then when you start getting into some of his more clutch stats, um, that's when he actually starts to struggle a bit more. His batting average of runners in scoring position is only 220, and his average with runners in scoring position, 2 outs is 269. And in high leverage situations, I'm sorry, I don't know what baseball reference considers high leverage, but I feel like everyone can paint enough of a mental picture to get an idea of when you consider high leverage. He's batting 253. So those aren't bad numbers, though runners in scoring position 220 is not great from that type of guy. His average is also 268 in the leadoff spot, where it's over 300 batting second. So that's more of a not necessarily his fault, but that is a Dave Roberts choice of batting him leadoff. Whereas Marcell Ozuna has been like the model of consistency all across the board and pretty much throughout the entire season. 306 versus righties, 317 versus lefties, 305 at home, 311 on the road, 18 home runs, the 19 home runs, 303 in the first half. He's actually a little better in the second half right now with 320. His OPS 7 points better at 967. He's batted over 300 3 months, and his worst month he batted 280 with 5 home runs and 18 RBIs. Um, he has the same batting average when whether the Braves are winning or losing games, and usually there's a bit of a drop off when a team is losing. He's a monster on the first pitch, batting 510 with 8 home runs. He has a 293 batting average with runners in scoring position. 411 when it's a late or close game, 316 if the game's tied, and in a high leverage situation, his average is 364, which is good for a 199 OPS plus. And the big thing you have to think about with the Braves too is if you want to say that Ohtani stats are maybe slightly better, this is also the most valuable player that we're talking about. And in the Braves situation, there is absolutely no denial among everyone that the Braves have been hit by the injury bug and that their offense from who they do have has underperformed. Marcell Ozuna is probably the one thing that has kept them in the race as long as they have and not behind the Mets, especially since the team has dropped from being the favorite to win the division to clearly the first wild card spot, and now not necessarily staying afloat, but they're slightly treading water. At the Mets 3 games behind them in the third wild card spot, they could have a very different story if we were getting the Marcell Ozuna of like 2 to 4 years ago. So
Yeah.
I feel like if Ohtani was an outfielder and you had defense behind it, then I would probably give the edge to. But since you're talking about 2 designated hitters and the role Marcell Ozuna has also had to carry the Braves and be as clutch as he has and as consistent as he has year round, I feel like that in the end should be enough in my mind to overtake Ohtani and be the better player. It's just that 40-40 is kind of the quick flashy thing to look at.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about MVPs, and it's not just baseball, it's any sport. There is that conversation of okay, it's most valuable to their team. And I think if you're gonna make an argument for Azuna, as you said, that would be your point, right? Like Shohei, if he is not doing as good as he's doing, um, with the Dodgers still are the Dodgers. Like, and I know it's harder to make this argument this year because the Dodgers aren't running away with the division like they usually are. But if Shohei, if his stats are like a little bit less than they are right now, they're still making the playoffs. They're still going to be one of the best teams in the league. I don't really know if you could say the same thing about Ozuna and the Braves this year, which is crazy to think about because if you told me that at the beginning of the year, with what their pitching was supposed to be, with Ozzy Albies, with Ronald Acuna, with all these guys, and it really feels like if Marcell Ozuna is not playing to where he's at, they have no shot of making the playoffs. And again, crazy to think about, but when you're talking about MVP, most valuable to the team and all that, like that kind of comes in. And Bobby, I'll kind of go to you with this because again, it's not just a baseball thing. Like we see it across sports. Uh, the NFL, NHL, like anywhere you look, it's not always, oh well, this guy is the best. He's got the most, in hockey. That's the first thing I think of. He's got the most points, blah blah blah. It's about okay, what he's doing for the team. Like, what do you kind of make of that in terms of this situation with Ohtani and Ozuna? If Ozuna was to have an argument,
Absolutely consider. I think with a losing team, though, when a team doesn't make the playoffs, it's that the judge would be the fluke instance of you get that player that is absolutely having a crazy season that he bypasses any like shadowing of being on a lesser team, and that's definitely happened. I think the fact that the Yankees are doing as well as they has probably boosted slightly, but if the Yankees were the White Sox or the Yankees were the Yankees of a few years ago and just missing the postseason, if anything, it might actually give more flame to Bobby Witt because of the turnaround the Royals had versus what we're hypothetically saying would have been the Yankees just missing the postseason despite Judge. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. So one quick follow up then. Ozuna, like Judge, is on also chasing a triple crown. He leads right now barely in batting average. He leads in RBIs. He is second in home runs, five, I think, behind Ohtani. So if if Ozuna surpasses Ohtani, Ohtani gets one or two home runs in the month of September, and Ozuna gets like eight. Does that give Ozuna enough to over? And let's say Ohtani still finishes with his 40-40 season, but then you have Ozuna with the triple crown. Will that be enough to then overtake him? Or will Shohei still kind of have that edge, saying that the numbers in general elsewise kind of remain the same in that Ohtani has a better WAR, he has a better OPS. It's just that Ozuna gets the triple crown and Ohtani gets the 40-40 season.
To me, well, I think if Ozuna gets the triple crown, I think he should get it. Because you're also kind of implying that Ohtani would, I don't want to say cool off in the last month of the season, but he wouldn't be on his average, I guess. So
Let's say
if
he gets a career high in home runs. Let's say he gets 6 home runs, which would put him at 48,
eight,
I think it is,
yeah,
which would be a career high by two. And he like it. He bats 300 again, and he hits 120 RBIs with 50 stolen bases. Let's say he just gets there and just misses a 50-50 season.
I
And Ozuna bats 310. He gets 49 home runs and he has 130 RBIs. But like I said, when it comes to some of the smaller metrics like WAR,
yeah,
and since he's not fast, he doesn't get the doubles, he doesn't get the stolen bases, he doesn't get the triples. His WAR would be down by probably a few points. And Ohtani, even with Ozuna having a triple crown, could potentially have the best OPS plus and OPS. Like there's all these little factors in that case. If we're saying it's about kind of like Ohtani being Ohtani and he has the bit of the history behind him with the stats he's putting on, is there anything Ozuna could then do then accolades wise that would put him over the top? Or is Ohtani just kind of it's Ohtani, he's done a lot already and everyone's mesmerized with him?
that's a tough question. I think Ozuna at this point would have to have a significantly better September than Ohtani. Like if he wins the triple crown by like one home run And like if he narrowly wins it, I think Otani's like the base stealing and the WAR and stuff. I think we'll give it to him, which would be crazy for a triple crown winner not to win the MVP, or at least like being as close as it is. But yeah, I mean, I think Shohei, it's going to be pretty hard for him to lose this. I think at this point in time. Um, but yeah, I mean that is an interesting question, right? Like, what would have to happen in September for Ozuna to take over? The funny thing is about this conversation, we're having this whole conversation about Ozuna. He is not even the second favorite to get the MVP right now. It's Francisco Lindor, which well, up in the
Wipe
Florida.
him off of the face of the goddamn planet. He shouldn't even be close he shouldn't be in the top 5 in this conversation.
So this, I was just talking about this before. The stat of WAR and kind of what that means to people, and I feel like this is a obvious case of WAR being too prominent of a stat in this conversation. So, I mean, obviously you're pretty passionate about this with Lindor. What are
Well,
your
I've always
thoughts
had
on it?
strong thoughts of Lindor's performance with the Mets. I mean, I've had strong performance thoughts about what I thought he should be as the type of player, especially because he started out his career as what you would think I shouldn't say stereotypical shortstop because I do think you can have a bit of power and hit for average, but he was like a 320 or close to 300 hitter. He would hit low to mid 20s in home runs in a good season. He gets stolen bases, great defense. Like he was the table setter at the top of an order. Then he started to shift to be a power hitter, and in doing so, his average started to drop significantly as his power went up. And then the trade with the Mets, he's had at least, I'd say two. I mean, definitely the first year, but 2 of the 3 years prior to this year have been not ideal, probably for what you're wanting. Obviously, the Mets have only made the postseason once, so there's that side of it too. But he just that type of player seems it doesn't suit him. It seems like based on what he should be, given his skills and stat record. That being said, he is not having a bad season. I think, like you said, his WAR is helping him stand out more, and the fact that the Mets in the second half have come back in this race, and he's been part of the reason. But he's not. There's nothing about what he's done when I look at his stats, or even how maybe he's helped the Mets team, because it's not like he's like pretty much seemed like the sole person that's done it. I mean, he still has Alonso, and there were a period where at least I think it was like McNeil had gotten better because he was really bad, and I imagine that's dropped off. But the Mets have also had some decent starting pitching from some surprising people. I think it's just the WAR. I think what you said is probably accurate with the WAR. There's nothing there that says MVP at all, and I feel like since he also is a player with a name,
Yeah,
that's probably a reason to think about it. Like,
right. Which
defense is probably the huge thing, but
yeah, it absolutely is because
that's how he's getting the WAR.
I mean, to be fair, I will say he has 28. He has 28 home runs. So
Yeah, it's not bad, but
yeah,
there's
I was gonna say
better.
no, I know, but like his case is he is playing shortstop. This is one of the most valued defensive positions. I guess I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
He's like the
uh,
captain of the infield. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, obviously shortstop, center field, catcher are so important defensively. So when you're good at it, your WAR is obviously where it is. But I mean, yeah, 28 home runs. His average is only 270, which isn't horrible, but I think that's like, yeah, 24th in the NL in average. So I think as we've said, it's
It's a really
not,
good second half.
and it's not so much like anything he's done. I guess it's just like Shohei. You look at Shohei and Ozuna, at least offensively to us, and it's like, man, they are miles ahead of where he is, and how the hell is he second in there? Ketel Marte is
Ketel
another
Marte is being
player.
robbed.
Yeah, look, I have like a man crush on Ketel Marte. I've already talked about it. The
He's
guy
got a
is
better WAR than Lindor. Why is he lower?
this is where it comes in with he just feels like every year he's so underrated. And this year he's in the MVP convo, and he still feels like he's being disrespected.
It has to be the injury recently. It has to be. There's
Yeah,
no other reason I could even think of.
yeah,
Because his defense is also like among his career best. If you looked at like defensive runs saved with him, um, I just, I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it.
yeah. I will say, by the way, with Lindor, also 25 stolen bases. So again, I don't think it's insane that he's in the conversation. I just think it's insane that he's second.
Five.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the fact that he's second and by a pretty decent margin, um, you know, is big. Obviously, not, and I'm not saying this to rub it in, but Harper was in that conversation for a long time, but he's really dropped off, and it
Oh, his
feels
second
like,
half has been dealt with all types of stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
no, he's fallen out of it.
I mean, just kind of talking with the other candidates, and Will, I'll leave the NL MVP with this, that it is Ellie De La Cruz is sixth in the voting.
Shut up.
And I just want to get your thoughts on that. That's all.
All
Just a
right, let me
simple.
just. I'm gonna start a fight now. Um, he is when he's hot, he is on another planet. When he's not, which is a fair amount of the time, he's literally like holding a team back. It is insane. He's batting 170 in close games, 163 in tie games. He can't hit with runners in scoring position, really, especially with two outs. The dude was literally living his first like 3 months of the season with like two horrible months and one amazing month that just had him stand out. His second half has been weird because his average has been better, but his power and his stolen bases are gone. I felt like it was 3 weeks ago. There was the whole thing of he hit 60. He's at like 61 now. Like,
Yeah.
you just call it quits with the wheels. Like, I don't get it. And it's also weird from a Reds team that when you look at their was it the run differential, they're in the
Yeah.
plus and they should be a lot better than they are. And he is kind of heralded as the guy for the team, the most valuable player, the whatever you want to say, the offensive powerhouse. Like, I don't get it. And his defense is terrible.
Yeah.
Like,
Look,
he has a good arm, but there's just so much that I don't get.
I think he's a really good player, and I think there's two
Speed
sides.
taking too much attention.
Right. There's two sides with him. It's either you're on the side of this guy's amazing, he's the next great thing in baseball kind of thing, or it's this guy is overrated, and it's just what he does in the field is not that great. He's just really fast, and I feel like, look, I think he's a good player. Like, and I think he has his moments, but there's a lot he still has to work on. Obviously, he's a highlight reel. He's an electric player, but for him to be sixth in the voting is a little absurd. I'll leave it
It's
at
absolutely
that.
because of the speed. It's absolutely because of the speed. Everyone's on this like honeymoon high with the stolen bases returning and suddenly seeing these numbers you haven't seen since Ricky Henderson appear year after year. I'm not taking that away from what Acuna did last year. 40 home runs and 70 stolen bases, batting nearly 330 is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like once you have someone like eclipse 40 stolen bases, that's like the new home run. I mean, it's absolutely not. This game is still very much power over anything else. But
Yeah.
the way stolen bases are like praised, it's like, oh my god, this person must be like Usain Bolt in disguise.
That's what I'm saying. Like, a guy is a track star, I understand, but um I think I think there's time where he gets a little too overhyped. I also think there's times where he gets a little too much hate. So, I think as a Pirates fan, I say this with um
Saying that
some
out loud?
I was gonna say I say this with some caution, I guess, but like, I am excited to see him grow as a player. I just hopefully not too good, because we're gonna have to deal with him
Well,
for
you
the
moved
next
Daniel
3 years.
Cruz to the outfield. You need a shortstop.
Right. Well, we could have Ellie De La Cruz, Ryan De La Cruz, O'Neal Cruz. Holy shit, that'd be crazy.